The Dodge Viper is like baseball or driving on the right side of the road. It's the most American thing ever. So when Dodge shut down production on the Viper back in 2017, it hurt, man. And I hope I'm wrong when I say this, but it will be the last American-made supercar with a V10 under the hood, and that hurts even more. But instead of living in the past, today I'm gonna pay homage. We're gonna look at America's most track-capable production car ever built, the Dodge Viper ACR. So first, we're gonna talk about that acclaimed Pushrod V10 engine, and then we're gonna dive into some of the incredible engineering that went into the aerodynamics of the snake, which helped it set 13 track records all over the world, all while being a quarter of the cost of its European supercar brethren. Let's go, America! The Viper has always had the reputation as a car that is trying to kill you. The first one in 1992 had an 8-liter V10 with no automatic transmission, no AC, no exterior door handles, no windows, no airbags, no anti-lock brakes. So that gives you a sense of what Dodge was going for with the Viper. They built a wild horse that was buff and mean. And if you could get on and stay on, you could have the time of your life. But watch out, because it's gonna buck you off. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Cue clip of a dude driving one of these things off a cliff. Oh, now the 5th gen Viper ACR is also definitely still trying to kill you. It's still that same wild horse, but now it's even buffer and it's even meaner with that new V10 under the hood. But this time, Dodge has also kindly provided you with a nice little saddle to ride your new little buff pony. And that saddle is the Aero. And with their powers combined, it is an insane beast that you can gallop your happy little tush around the tracks all over the world. So let's talk about the horse. Why and how is this thing so crazy? Now this is the 5th gen Viper, and it has things like ABS and electronic stability control because it's federally mandated. But you can turn those gadgets off and experience what it's like to control 645 horsepower out of an all aluminum, naturally aspirated V10. So what makes this engine so special? Well, first, it's what's called a pushrod engine. And there are two main types of engines in mass-produced vehicles today. You got your overhead cam motors, and you got your pushrod motors, also called overhead valve engines. Now the Viper uses the more simplistic of the two, and that's the pushrod. And I say it's simplistic because overhead cam engines are typically more mechanically complex and are more complicated to operate. And from a production standpoint, they arrived on the scene much later on in the history of American-made cars. So let's explain the difference between the two engines, starting with the overhead cam design. Now we've talked about this a bunch, but in an internal combustion engine, you need a way to get air in and a way to get exhaust gases out. And a few weeks ago, we talked about the 4 cycles in a 4-stroke engine using the sweet acronym SSBB, suck, squeeze, bang, blow. Now the piston draws air and fuel into the cylinder through the intake valves, squeezes it, our spark plug lights that air fuel mixture, an explosion happens, bang, boom, and the piston blows the exhaust gas out the exhaust valves. The process starts all over again. Now the timing of when those intake and exhaust valves open and close to let air in and exhaust gas out might seem like it's magic. But in actuality, it's really just very cleverly engineered mechanical components at work. And that magical metal piece whose job it is to control all that timing is the camshaft. Now in overhead cam engines, you have a camshaft that sits over the combustion chamber in the cylinder head with the valves sitting below it. And the camshaft has these avocado shaped, people call them pears, they say pear shaped, but I'm gonna say avocado shaped because I'm cool. Now the camshaft have these avocado-shaped lobes on them called cams. And the camshaft is being driven by the crankshaft by either a belt or a chain, and that's called the timing belt or the timing chain. So when the camshaft rotates, those avocado-shaped lobes push down on the valve stems, which cause them to open. And that lets fresh air in and exhaust out. So what about pushrod engines? Well, the difference between a pushrod and an overhead cam motor is in the location of the camshaft. A pushrod engine has the camshaft located inside the block rather than in the head. And in a V engine, like in the Viper, it's right between the V, right between the two rows of cylinders. Now it's still connected to the crankshaft, either by a chain or by gears, but it operates the valves in a much different way. So as the camshaft rotates, the lobes push on rods, the rods push the rockers, and the rockers push on the valves. So if both engines do the same thing, they cause valves to open, and they just go about it in a different way, why are overhead cam engines considered technologically better? Well, first is in the placement of the valves. Now in an overhead cam engine, because you have individual camshafts operating the intake and exhaust valves, you can position those valves at their optimal angle, which in turn helps the engine breathe better, and therefore you can make more power. And with a pushrod engine, your intake and exhaust valves have to be in line simply due to the nature of the layout of a pushrod engine. Now, because you only have a single camshaft, you can't get funky with where you position your intake and exhaust valves. Secondly, overhead cam engines can rev higher. Because the motion transferred from the cams to the valves is more direct with fewer moving parts, there's less reciprocating mass to deal with. Remember, with a pushrod engine, that motion from the cam has to travel all the way up the length of the rod to get to the valves. So those extra parts, that extra mass, is therefore harder to move, and it's harder to move them faster. I mean, watch this. When I stand next to this light switch, I can flick it on and off really fast. My finger is in direct contact with the switch. Now, if I take a step back and I try to turn that switch on and off with a broom handle, it is much harder to do the same task quickly, even if I'm really good at it. Like, I'm the best damn broomstick light switch flicker in the entire free world. I will still never be able to match the speed if my finger was directly on the switch. So just so we're clear, the broomstick is like a pushrod, and the overhead cam engine is my finger. I don't know if I was clear enough. I hope I was. I don't want to leave anybody out. So the last advantage I want to talk about is that with overhead cam engines, you can alter the timing and lift through clever ways such as VTEC or NVTC. Now, we talked about variable valve timing in our 300ZX episode. You should go back and watch it. But VVT is a way in which you can advance or retard the timing of the valves using a specially designed camshaft. And that is a great feature because it allows the car to be more fuel efficient. You can produce more power, you can have better throttle response. There's a bunch of good reasons why you would want to have that. And in a pushrod engine, you don't have the luxury of using multiple cams to alter your engine's performance on the fly. Well, unless you have a Dodge Viper. As it turns out, the engineers over at Dodge got all VVT jealous and came up with their own clever way of using variable valve timing in a pushrod engine. And I'm gonna get to that in a second, but first I wanna talk about the advantages of pushrod engines in general. I mean, there has to be a reason Dodge still uses them. And not only Dodge, what about Chevy with their LS engines? One of the best engines ever made. So first and foremost is the size of a pushrod engine. They are smaller than overhead cam engines. A single camshaft placed in the center of your V means you have smaller cylinder heads, and smaller heads mean a smaller overall engine package, and that is great on two fronts. For one, when you don't have big cams sitting on top of your engine, you have more space to work with when designing your engine placement. Take the 300ZX for example. That car is a to work on, and that's because it's got 4 cams and it's a big motor packed in a tiny space. People hate working on that car. Now you can place the engine lower in the chassis, which then lowers the center of gravity. Having a lower center of gravity is obviously great when it comes to stability and handling. There's a reason F1 cars are low to the ground. Now you want as much mass to be as low in the car as you can. And not only that, but the engine itself has a lower center of gravity, with the camshaft being in the block rather than on top of the heads. Now secondly, pushrod engines have tons of low end torque. And the reason they have that torque in the low rev range is because they use 2 valves per cylinder. And more valves might seem like a better option, but let me explain, okay? At low RPM, the air entering the cylinder is more restricted, and then that air speeds up because of that. That sped up air is more turbulent and causes better fuel-air mixing. Higher air velocity plus a better fuel-air mixture creates a better boom, and that means more torque. And the ACR it has a lot of torque, the most in any naturally aspirated gas engine in any production car ever built. It's at 600 foot-pounds of torque. Just think about that for a second. Think about all the cars that have been manufactured in the history of cars. The 5th gen Viper ACR stands at the top of that podium in that category. That is wild. So while the Viper has loads of torque, what about horsepower? How does that archaic, naturally aspirated pushrod V10 get you 645 horsepower in the ACR? Well, we gotta bring our favorite donut equation into the mix. We got more air plus more fuel equals more power. And we can usually tackle the more air part of the equation by adding turbos or adding a supercharger. But for Dodge, in true Viper fashion, they did it the good old fashioned way. They made it bigger. They kept it naturally aspirated, and they used displacement as their ally. No turbos, no superchargers. And when you're not using forced induction, you need as much displacement as possible. And the Viper does that by using 8.4 liters of displacement across 10 cylinders. So I'm a visual person, so to help explain how much that is, I have a bottle here, and it has exactly 840 milliliters in it. That's 0.84 liters. The contents of this bottle will fill up only one cylinder in the Viper. So imagine this times 10. 10 of those. That is a lot of air getting pulled into the combustion chamber. You might be asking, hey, how does this dude have a freaking graduated bottle? Because at the last place I worked in a lab, I stole it. Don't say it, don't put that in. I teased earlier that the Viper has its own version of variable valve timing. But how can a pushrod engine vary the timing of its valves when it only has one camshaft? And what performance benefit does that even get you? Well, like all good engineering devices, the Viper's camshaft is quite ingenious. Have you ever seen one of these types of drawings? Well, that's kind of what Dodge did with their camshaft. It's insane. It uses what's called a duo cam. Now, this dual single cam system consists of a solid intake camshaft within a hollow exhaust camshaft. And the solid shaft has holes for cylindrical pins, 5 of them to be exact, and when activated, they align with slots in the hollow outer shaft. The two camshafts then become one, and the exhaust timing is altered. So, why would you want this? Well, the camshaft in the Viper is considered a performance camshaft. Normally, this type of camshaft would be illegal in a production car. Now, performance camshaft is there for one sole purpose, and that is to increase performance. Duh. But it also increases emissions because you're basically just sitting there always churning at full bore. That's why when you hear some muscle cars, they have that lope sound, blah, 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 blah. That is a performance cam, and it is also almost definitely always not meeting emission standards. So when you're trying to build a high horsepower, high torque engine that is also street legal, you have to strike a balance between performance and emissions regulations. So to combat that problem, the Dodge engineers used their new duo cam camshaft to reduce the amount of exhaust gas dilution at lower RPMs, making the Viper a more eco-friendly car. And the Viper was the first production pushrod engine with VVT on the exhaust valves. Pretty nifty. So that was the first part of the equation. The wild V10 horse you got betwixt your thighs. But how do you keep a car with such an insane engine on the road? Well, in the past with the Viper, you didn't. The car was in a constant state of trying to kill you. It's what made it so charming. Ted Bundy was a charmer. And don't get me wrong, this ACR Viper still has the genetic makeup to put you 6 foot under. But at least the engineers over at Dodge gave you a bunch of Aero so that when you start going fast, the less angry the Viper is at you. Now, the second half that makes the Viper ACR the best car to ever come out of the USA is its ability to stick to the ground. We're talking about downforce. To better understand downforce, I'll start by explaining lift. Now with a plane, you have a wing like this, right? And as it goes along, you have air that pushes up on it and it causes it to lift. Now if we flip that wing upside down, the reverse happens, and now instead of the air pushing up, it pushes down, and that is called downforce or negative lift. And in the car world, we use a spoiler or rear wing to do that. And in the case of the Viper ACR, they use a very big spoiler, a 1,776 millimeter wide spoiler. Yep, you heard it right, 1776, the same year the USA was founded, because of course, this is the best car to ever be built in America. I'm trying to tell you guys this, I'm preaching it. I'm preaching the gospel. You'll be my flock of sheep. I'm the Dodge Jesus. And that's the size of the standard wing on the ACR. If you get the extreme Aero package, it widens it by another 100 millimeters to 1,886 millimeters. That's 6 foot 2 inches. I'm 6 foot 4 inches. That's only 2 inches shorter than me, just laying there on the wing, just getting air blasted down. Wild, man. Even the material the wing uses is special. And while most wings have some sort of structural core to support it, the ACR's wing is hollow and it uses only 4 layers of carbon fiber, but it's still amazingly strong. And there's even structural support built into the trunk to help support all that downforce created by this wing. A full grown-ass man could stand on the end of this wing and it wouldn't break. That is a really strong spoiler. And trust me, that's the kind of spoiler you want when you're doing really dumb stuff like this. That dude for sure lost his teeth, right? Like he doesn't have teeth right now. Like homeboy is COVID up with no teeth, just gumming food. Homie, what are you doing? Don't ever do that shit. That is so stupid. Now that spoiler creates a ton of downforce. And I actually read a funny story about this. A guy who was towing his Viper behind his truck in an open trailer was getting 2 miles per gallon worse fuel economy because of how much force the Viper spoiler was pushing down on the rear end of the trailer, slowing his truck down as he was toting it along the road. That is pretty cool. I mean, it sucks for him, but pretty interesting. So, if you have all that added force pushing down on the back of the car, why doesn't the Viper just do a wheelie? Well, there's a bunch of goodies up front that help create downforce on the front end of the Viper. First, there's a front splitter that sticks out about 5 inches past the bumper in the front of the car, and it also goes a couple feet in towards the center of the car. And like the rear end diffuser, there are these vertical strakes, and those vertical strakes, they keep the air confined in that area. It traps the air in so you don't lose any downforce when you're turning. It's the same reason why the wing has vertical ends on the 2 sides. It's like a bookend. It keeps the air right in place. Adding even more downforce are these little winglets on the front bumper. And they have 2 purposes. Like the rear wing, they help produce downforce. And actually, if you look close, they also have vertical edges on the side to keep the air in place. And the second function they have is to send air to help cool the brakes. So moving to the fenders, the ACR has louvers. And the purpose of louvers is to vent high pressure building from under the car. So what does all these Aero bits equate to? Well, it equates to the most downforce in any production car ever built. 800 kilograms, 1,700 pounds when it's going to top speed of 177 miles per. And the more downforce you make, the better your car grips the track. And the better your car grips the track, the faster you can take corners. And the faster you take corners, the more track records you set. All that downforce comes with a trade-off, and that trade-off is drag. And now drag is just air resistance. It's the force acting opposite to the relative motion of whatever moving object you have. So with the Aero package, it takes the base Viper with a coefficient of drag of 0.37 and it bumps it up to 0.54. That increase in drag effectively decreases its top speed as well, so you lose 29 miles per hour on the top end. And what the ACR lost in top speed, it more than made up for it in the corners. And when it was released, it went on a run of destroying track records across the globe. Dodge took the old school beast of a car and with some engineering turned it into an amazing machine. It sucks it's not around anymore, man. It breaks my friggin' heart. It's one of my favorite cars of all time. And for the money, there's not a more capable car out there. Hopefully one day they'll make another one and it'll try to kill you just as hard. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Bumper to Bumper. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. Also, we're doing something new. All of us here at Donut are gonna be in the comments of all of our videos for the very first hour. So be sure to hit that bell. You'll be notified when we post a new video. We'll be in there, responding to your comments. So please come hang out with us. Let us know, let us know what's going on. And it'll notify you when we post new shows. And we post new shows every day of the week. Donut every day. Follow us on Instagram at Donut Media. Follow me at Jeremiah Burton. If you got a Viper ACR, you got any Viper, hit me up. Show me some pictures of it, man. It's one of my favorite cars of all time. I had 2 posters in my room as a kid. I had a Viper, 2nd gen Viper, blue with white stripes, and I had a purple Lamborghini Diablo. And I'm gonna have both of them one day. You just watch. And by the way, we actually need your help. If you want your car featured on Bumper to Bumper, follow us on all our social media platforms. We're gonna be posting some of the cars that we need footage from in future episodes, and your car could be featured on the show. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting us. Stay safe out there. Bye for now.